You guys wouldn't believe it. Just hours after we recorded our Boston Celtics 2022-2023 NBA season preview. Um, Woj dropped the tweet at midnight.
No
Very late at
context at all.
no context, just a ridiculous tweet. It's one of those things where you shorty hit you up and tell you we gotta talk, and she said she's not gonna tell you till the end of the day. That's what Woj did. He tweeted that at midnight and went to sleep. So obviously now, as you guys all as you guys all know, Ime Udoka suspended for the year for uh for relations, um, consensual as they say, but it's just inter staff relations that may have resulted in some other stuff. We're not gonna talk about it. We're not gonna do no real slander or no real talk. We don't want no libel. We don't want no charges. So we're just gonna say alleged things have happened. Udoka's not gonna be there for the Celtics this year. Nia Long, if you're listening, I'm here. We're here to comfort you. The black community stands behind you. Um, but other than that, it's that changes things because this coach brought an identity to this team. We saw last year how when the Celtics were struggling, they took on the personality of their coach, I guess for better or worse, and they were able to get to the championship, the NBA Finals, and they ultimately fell short to Steph Curry, one of the greatest of all time. But without his leadership on the sideline this year, this kind of changes things for the team. So Sean, what are you thinking now as Ime is out for the year and this team has to kind of find itself on top of every other hit that they've taken. Robert Williams had surgery since then as well, so he's probably going to miss the first 2 to 3 months, and obviously Gallo's out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to quote the great Biggie Smalls, don't shit where you eat, brothers. Like if you in the workplace, be careful. I know a lot of y'all brothers out here working with the work wives, and I know how a lot of people get down. You got to be careful. Ime was out here moving, I mean, he was moving worse than a dog. There has to be another phrase to describe what he was
Yeah, he
doing.
got crazy.
Yeah, he was wilding. The internet's gonna do their internet sleuthing things. All type of women being thrown out there. But yeah, I think just in terms of it remains to be seen. Obviously, the optics of it look horrible, and I think the Celtics. They said he's only suspended for the season. Um, do I see a Alex Cora type of situation to where he's suspended for the year and then comes back? Not really. I think he might. That's a baseball reference for my basketball fans. I'm sorry. I know I hate the cross sport reference, but yeah, it'll remain to be seen just in terms of like what happens with Udoka. Obviously, I think he had like one of the most successful rookie seasons for a rookie coach in some time. But yeah, like he got himself into an insane amount of trouble. It sounds like he was wilding a lot just in the workplace. Whether it was one of those executives husbands. I saw something about being caught on the ring camera, which it's a bad way to get caught, but you gotta
Yeah,
like you have nobody else to blame but
a
yourself.
bunch of people have been getting caught on ring cameras as of late. Shout out to the solar panel racist as well. Just a just a ridiculous week we've been having.
But yeah, I think just in terms of and a lot of this is hearsay. I think as who knows, we might not ever get the official news about what happens. 'Cause I think at a certain point, I know for sure the Celtics going to try and um, you know drag this under the cover and just try and throw this away. Um, you know, Ime, you wild. Remains to be seen if you will have another coaching gig in the NBA. Just to as you guys are about to listen to the rest of this episode, obviously enjoy the rest of this content that we're gonna put out there. The Robert Williams injury, another thing, Time Lord. I think originally you said like 4 to 6 weeks, and he was expected back like early, like November or whatever, or even like a couple weeks into the season. And I think that changed to like maybe like 6 to 8 or whatever the Shams report was. So I mean, I think this is enough turmoil and just team being in this disarray for me to change my my official prediction. I'm taking the under for the Celtics team. I think it remains to I think it's going to be big on just the leadership of guys like Tatum and Horford to really get this team in order. But yeah, we just had to re-record this because obviously that Woj bomb kind of just shook the whole basketball sphere up. And the video devoid of any context in regards to Ime Udoka being a horn dog. It kind of just didn't make any sense. We had to throw that in for you guys. Definitely enjoy the rest of the episode and check out the rest of the content we're gonna be getting out of here.
Do you wanna just before we even get out, sorry to even jump us back in. You know, are we gonna just sit with what we predicted a couple of days ago, or do you want to give them an updated
I'm
over and
taking
under?
the under. I'm switching to the under.
You switching to the under? Okay.
Yeah, 55. It was fit. Like it'll be funny to see, like the Vegas Sharks are sharp, but they know everything. So,
Yeah.
does infidelity affect the over underline? Remains to be seen how much a coach getting fired for being horny will affect the Vegas over under odds total. But we will be seeing it's still at 54.5 from what I've seen. But I think just in terms of injury, Gallo's already out. Wish he was out when we recorded that. But Time Lord being hurt. If anybody else gets hurt, then the rotation is like bordering on. It went from a strength to just it being a little stretched out from what they got. So yeah, I'm taking the under. I don't know if you want to switch here. I think you took the under anyway. Did you?
Yeah, I took the under, so I mean I'll keep the under, but I mean
Yeah.
unless the team is just spirited by infidelity and they turn out to be a 60-win team. But nah, yeah, with the under, man. Y'all enjoy the rest of the episode. This is the Draft Season Podcast.
This is the Draft Season Podcast, and we are back with another 2023 NBA team preview. And on today's video, we are discussing the Boston Celtics, aka the team that could not get over the hump this season and last season and beat the Golden State Warriors. I'm here with my guy Raz. Before we do get into the video today, if you are checking out this video, please do make sure you are subscribed and checking out the rest of our content on the Draft Season Podcast and the Draft Season YouTube page. But yeah, man, Raz, getting into the actual 2023 Boston Celtics. Obviously, here we can do the rundown of their season: 51-31 last season. They were 2 games away at one point from the NBA championship. Right now, their over/under total, courtesy of DraftKings, is at 45.5 wins, and they are, as of I think a couple weeks ago, the title favorites at plus 550 to win the NBA title. So I mean, Vegas must be big fans of Malcolm Brogdon. But how are you at taking the temperature of Boston? How does that sound to you? Boston Celtics title favorite.
It sounds awful being a Knicks fan, but I mean, this team, made a run last year. They've increased some talent on that team. Obviously, Malcolm Brogdon being the big addition to this team is incredible. It gives them another ball handler if he's healthy. He's somebody who's flirted 50, 40, 90 as well. He's a very good player. He might have actually gotten 50, 40, 90 if I go back and check. But, Malcolm Brogdon,
I think he got one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he got one, so he is a player that gives them something instantly, off the bench. And shit, they'll probably run some lineups with him starting as well, like him being a big, maybe not starting, but closing with him, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, and Horford or Robert Williams if he's healthy. Like that's a very serious lineup there. And then you obviously have the acquisition that they made last year with Derek White, and he's somebody who was very streaky last year in the playoffs. But I mean, if he's on, he also fits that same kind of mold of the ball handlers that they have with Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, and then obviously Derek White. Depth on this team, I think is a little bit of an issue for me now with some of these teams in the East getting a bit healthier. If you're relying on Hauser, Grant Williams is obviously he showed what type of player he is, but I would like to see him capitalize and kind of grow on that. And then Luke Cornett always got a job, but barring an injury to Time Lord, who has proven that he's not the healthiest of player, they're kind of thin at that front line, and I think you would have to slide Al Horford down to the 5 and then rely on Williams to play that 4, and then you're very stretched thin. So I mean, with a healthy roster, this team is as good as it gets. But everybody doesn't stay healthy in the NBA season.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Obviously, on the day, we're recording this on September 20th, this evening, and yeah, earlier today, the news about Robert Time Lord Williams, planning to undergo a left knee procedure, that would require 4 to 6 weeks at least of him missing time, which probably the season is set to start what, the 18th, so 4 weeks would leave him at the start of the season. 6 weeks would be what that would be early November. But I think for a guy like Robert Williams, somebody who is integral to the reason why that defense was incredible down the stretch, and Boston's defense last season, let me pull it up right here. They had the best defense in the league, and Time Lord is, a huge reason of why he took that next step as a defender. So if they are legitimate, or if they're serious about their title chances this season, yeah, I would just make sure he is 100% healthy, even if it means a late start to the season. Whether that's, I know we spoke about this offline, but whether that means Thanksgiving, early December, however long until he's feeling 100%. Because yeah, I would hate for another Isaiah Thomas situation to where the fabric and the path and trajectory that his career is on is seriously affected due to him playing through knee injuries or playing through an injury for the team throughout the playoffs. So, shout out to Time Lord. Hopefully he does actually stay or get healthy soon, and he's back playing and back being he has obviously all defense upside, and like in a different world, maybe even all defensive team upside. Going to the uh, point that you made about just overall depth, I do think this team is still pretty solidly, set or in a good place to really survive a Robert Williams injury. I think Al Horford probably slides down to center, and Grant Williams, whether they keep him, I'd probably say they keep him on the bench. They probably slide Tatum and Brown down a slot, and Tatum and the Brown probably are your 3-4s, and you can probably go with a Marcus Smart or Brogdon or whatever additional guard that they do have as the third guy off the bench. So due to just the versatility that these guys do bring, and that's the importance of having those wings. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown have proven to be high level defenders, and they're a big part of why that team was able to win 3 playoff series last year. So not necessarily too worried about them on that side. And they do have, like I said, shout out to Noah Vonleh also keeping the job. But just going through to recap their off season real quick before we do move forward. Obviously, Malcolm Brogdon, they did pick up for the Pacers for a first round pick. I believe it was back end of the first round. I believe Danilo Gallinari, Knicks legend, obviously um, injured himself in EuroBasket, which does suck to see. I think he would have brought this team some additional shooting that they actually really did need. I think that was a big problem for them in the postseason, especially with Tatum's jumps or Tatum scoring in general, just being in hell from the defensive pressure that the actual Warriors brought to him. It was at a certain point during the finals to where it just felt like Al Horford was their most consistent outside shooter. Obviously, Marcus Smart has improved, and he's improved. He's taken a huge improvement as a shooter from where he was at Oklahoma State. He's somebody who I'm not sure. I'd have to pull up what he shot last season, but he was really respected. He was somebody who you have actually had to respect on the perimeter last season. So that is an additional respect. But I still do I don't think he's not you know making anybody afraid from the outside. You're still living with if Marcus Smart is hitting you for 4 or 5 threes a game. It's just kind of one of those things that it wasn't our night if Marcus Smart is hitting those threes. But he's not a non floor spacer at this point. But yeah, I do think, especially with the subtraction of Danilo Gallinari, that's going to be a pretty big. I would say, they're going to have to replace. They still do need some additional shooting from somebody on this team. Malcolm Brogdon is going to be a pretty good, important part on that team. But even they're going to probably need a lot more, and a more consistent shooting year for Derek White, who is more streaky than a good shooter, and usually on the colder side than just a pure floor spacer, or somebody who's scaring defenses, or somebody that defenses are really afraid of on the outside. They did draft J.D. Davidson, number 53, Alabama. Obviously, Luke Cornett, as you did mention, they re-signed. They also did shout out to Bruno Cabolo, former Raptor that they brought. They subtractions for the Celtics this year. Daniel Theis, who was Daniel Theis, and Aaron Naismith, who were in the Brogdon trade going to the Pacers. That's about it for the major subtractions. But for this team, at least, Raz, and I think it's obvious that they are one of the best teams in the league, and they just went on a ridiculous run, basically from I think what was it after New Year's, to where they were just I think it was the Celtics and the Mavs that were just the two best teams in the league after like January 1st. But what does taking that next step for this team look like in your eyes? Because obviously, I think it's safe to say Jayson Tatum had a pretty bad finals. What do you want to call that? Uncharacteristic or not? I think the defense, had the Warriors' defense just being so smart had a pretty good effect on Tatum, just not ever finding that rhythm. But as the superstar on this team and the alpha, you do need more from Tatum. And I think he's somebody who has rebounded from his clinkers and clunkers in the past. But what does the next step look like for this team for you, Raz, particularly with Jayson Tatum? I know we've had this conversation in the past about what is his ultimate upside. How close do you think he is to the player that he will be in his prime? Well, I think he just turned 24 or something. So we're still talking about somebody who has basically the good portion of their prime remaining. So the arrow is still pointing up on Jayson Tatum. But what do you see as that next step for Jayson Tatum? And I'll also throw in Jaylen Brown, who had a he's pretty good and just has one of the best two-way guys as a wing who can defend and give you actual good scoring. I think there's certain segments of Celtics fans who would make the argument that maybe they should break them up. I think they've had a lot of success that it's tough to do that. But for Tatum and Jaylen Brown, what do you foresee as that next step for those two?
I mean, Tatum has shown that, his heights can get you to an NBA Finals at least, right? So it's now to prove, does he take that next step? When we talk about superstars and we talk about stars, there's a big difference, right? We kind of had him pegged as a star. Getting your team to an NBA Finals starts to put you in some of those talks that are hard to come back from. You're starting to get compared to some of the best to ever do it and the best that are currently doing it. Jayson Tatum has all of the physical intangibles as a scorer that you would look for in a player that's going to be your lead scorer. Now it's what is he going to do now? Not necessarily that he has to be a superb playmaker or anything like that, but what is he now going to do to elevate his team further? What did he do in the lab this summer? What kind of tricks of the trade did he pick up that is going to elevate his game to another level? And I think that also is going to benefit Jaylen Brown because this rumored breakup has been on for years, whether it's been by the two players, which we've never actually heard that from them, or just the front office in general. They by
It
all
hasn't really been a front office either. It's mostly been, conjecture and a certain level of fan fiction from some guys because it doesn't actually ever seem. I mean, obviously, I think the elephant in the room is the Kevin Durant non-trade at this point, to where it seemed like they did put Jaylen Brown on the table. Now, does that affect how, if he wants to stay in Boston long term? That remains to be seen as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jaylen Brown has the opportunity to step up and be that very much comparable number two or one B to Jayson Tatum. I think what Jayson Tatum brings to the table this year will obviously have the direct effect on Jaylen Brown, but it's how are they going to grow this partnership into finally securing that championship for the team? What additional things do they both need to add to their game?
That's definitely a pretty good point of it. I know last year for sure with Tatum was the worst mid range shooting season that he had in his career so far. So especially, I think that's kind of the best thing about Tatum and why his floor is just so high. Because obviously, it's funny just to think about Tatum as a prospect coming out at Duke. Um, he was killed for shot selection, which I mean, if you're a great player, how many players how many players actually have like good shot selection? If you're a plus scorer, your shot selection is kind of nutty to begin with. I think Tatum has proven to be one of those guys to where he can make any shot that you need for him. I think early in his career, he was a little bit too much, mid range, heavy in his actual shot profile. And last season, taking a look at, diving a little deeper, into his numbers, 31% of his shots were from the mid range area, which was the lowest of his career. His previous low was 35%, which he had in his rookie season and the 2019-2020 season. So, improving or, taking even more threes, 38% of his shots last season were threes. I think Tatum has also grown to be, he's been consistently a plus shooter. So I think finding a way to even, up his 3-point frequency, taking that to another level, could even, take him to another, realm. I think there's also a possibility Jayson Tatum could, in the future win a scoring title. I think he's that type of scorer. There's just so many like great scorers in the league, but like, would you be surprised if Tatum averaged like 32 points for an entire season in his prime?
No, I mean, I think he has that ability. I mean, he's that good. And he's the type of player where, he's tall enough and he's strong enough to where many defenders can't affect his shot. So if he's in a year where everything's clicking, I could very much see that.
So I mean, going back to the Jaylen Brown thing right now, because yeah, it's interesting to see his inclusion. um, Brad Stevens just going full Danny Ainge and putting him out there, which to a certain extent, as much as I do the KD trade saga or the whatever. I mean, it was a fake trade saga since he never got traded, but I think there were a lot of interesting points about like what type of asset do you actually trade for a player like Kevin Durant? Now, obviously, Jaylen Brown, and I think this might have had a part of why they went ahead and tried to trade him. But after this season, he has one. He's a expiring contract next season. He'll be making $30 million on his last season in the 2023-2024 season. Obviously, Tatum's already re-upped and he signed until 2026, where he has a player option that season. So he has another 2 years after that. So I mean, how do you like? What do you like? We spoke about this a little bit before, but like, what do you make of like? Do you think this is the long term fit to go for? I know there's been a lot of chatter about the fit together, but like, I mean, even putting yourself in Jaylen Brown's shoes, which is tough. Nobody can really tell us how he's feeling, but it didn't seem like he was also like nobody's happy about being in trade rumors either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like hearing yourself
Coming off
in
the
that chatter.
finals, not even.
Yeah, that's what
I'm
I'm
sorry,
saying.
but coming off the finals.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy literally coming off the NBA final. I mean, but it's Kevin Durant, right? So it's
Kevin
like
Durant.
it's one of those
It
things.
is Kevin
It's one of those
Durant,
things
so.
where you have to like it's hard. It's hard to sit here and tell a world class athlete not to take it personal, though, right? Like how you gonna sit here and tell me we just made it to the finals? You want to go get better? Like, yeah, in theory, you guys didn't win, so you have to get better, right? But it's like I think the pride of these people, they feel that they can get it done on their own.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the tough part about it because yeah, they're pretty good, but I still think was this a plateau for them? Possibly. I don't. I think this team is too good to say it's plateaued. But you also to win, three playoff series and make it back to the finals, you have to be, supremely good. Especially the East is even deeper than ever. So I mean, what other questions do you have about the team for you, Raz? I will go with another one that I personally have, which is and I suppose the Time Lord injury, even though he's not a guard, but I think it might, like I did say earlier in regards to the Tatum and Brown just sliding down on the positional spectrum. Who's going to close? Because you have Marcus Smart, you have Derek White, and you have Malcolm Brogdon. All three of those guys are not closing on a night-to-night basis. Ime Udoka, who we have not mentioned yet, shout out to him just being I think for what he did in his first season as NBA coach, he's somebody who I think is incredible. And the fact that it took him a while to get that job, and even I think the Nets might be like killing themselves that they didn't hire a guy like Ime Udoka to see, just because I think he was able to actually get the most out of this team. It was almost incredible just to see getting guys to react to tough love is not necessarily always the best way to go about it, because you never know how guys are going to react. Ime Udoka, especially that early portion of the season when they were sputtering, he was tearing those guys up, and he was able to really, get those guys refocused on playing winning basketball the right way. So I think a coach like that who's been able to, play or just put the right pieces in and play the right lineups, it's going to take some soothing of whether it's egos. And I know Malcolm Brogdon isn't necessarily a bastion of health, somebody who stays healthy all the time. So I think there's going to be times where, he's probably missing games. But how do you foresee the just closing lineups and going through, the smart Brogdon White clutter of guards, which, for what those guys do, it's a pretty damn good. You can't ask for a lot more from your guards. I guess you could say that this team is missing an additional playmaker. Smart, Brogdon, and White are probably about like average or good enough. They're good enough to run your sets. This team probably just lacks a plus playmaker. But I think when you have one of the best defenses and a couple, 20 point scorers who are able to do that efficiently on a night in night basis, it still gives you a great team. But what do you make about how do you foresee the guard rotation really playing out and meshing, I would say?
I mean, I think I think it's gonna get. I think Brogdon obviously is gonna be the first one off the bench. But I do think obviously Derek White, he's going to play upwards to 20 to 25 minutes in this as well. I think they're going to run those four guards, and you'll have that I guess in most lineups you would have the third ball handler, like somebody like Peyton Pritchard, come off the bench, but like he is now the, what is this? He'll be the third guard off the bench. So I mean, this team is deep
Not
in
bad.
the
That's
guard play.
that's what he
That,
needs to be.
yeah, so but I do think now when you start getting into some of these lineups, right? I think there will be lineups obviously where Horford will play that five, and you'll be able to get two of those guys in at the same time. I think they'll be able to play around with those lineups, and vice versa with Time Lord. I think there's going to be a lot of plug and play with the guards, and I think they should have one of the best guard rotations, obviously in the NBA. But it's one of those things where you have to figure out the closing lineup, and I'm all for riding the hot hand and whoever's playing well that game, but it's going to come into matchups, especially when you start getting into the playoffs and teams are played each other 5 times in a row. You need to know where you're going to go and what's going to work out for you. And I do see Brogdon being in that person in that lineup, but I think you're going to sacrifice a big. Um, and I think it just depends on who the other big is on the other team. But I think you will run out there with Marcus Smart and Brogdon as a 1-2, and then Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, the 4-5 at the four, the 3 and the 4, and then figure out what you do with the 5 from there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's honestly a great problem to have when you get into like building a roster out, because although Smart, Brogdon, and Derek White are all point guards, they're essentially all also off ball wings who can also play. So it's going to keep the defensive utility very high, and it's also going to give them a lot of matchups that they're going to be able to actually capitalize on. And not a lot. This I'm not sure if I had to think about. I mean, off the top of my head, like this has to be like one of the 5 best rosters in the NBA. But I mean, I guess we could wrap it up here, as obviously we said it earlier. The over under for the 2023 Boston Celtics is 54.5 wins. I'm probably going to take the over because I think they're going to be one of the best regular season teams in the league. But DraftKings had them as the title favorite. Just to keep it to the Eastern Conference, if the Celtics are not your title favorite, who do you think, or what team? Because I think, especially you look at that the actual Nets versus Celtics series wasn't close. They kind of just like, scrubbed the floor with them. Uh, the actual Bucks, I think Bucks versus Celtics in the series is a toss up at best, and then you get into, whether who else we can see from the East, really coming down. So, I mean, how do you who do you think is their biggest issue or biggest matchup problem in the East when it comes to a playoff setting?
I mean, I think a healthy Bucks team is going to be tough for most teams in this conference. Giannis is just that undeniable of a talent. They don't have anything for him, and nobody does. So I think you got to look there, and they have kind of the bigs to battle as well with Horford and Time Lord. Um, I think if you also start looking into it, the Sixers have bolstered up their lineup. I mean, we do say this a lot about the Sixers, but I mean, if Harden is back this year and you have some of the additions that they made just to make them just a bit more tougher of a team, those are the two top threats, I would say. And obviously, if the Nets are healthy, this is like the top four in the East is going to be a bloodbath. So 550 as title odds, I mean, and they're the favorites. I mean, that's high praise, and Vegas is very good, so maybe they know something we don't, and they're just relying on this continuity and the additions of some of these players that the Celtics has. But I mean, not 44, but 54.5. It's a lot of wins in a conference. I think that's going to be very good. I don't. I think I see the one seed in the East probably finishing around like 53. So I don't think there's going to be a 60 win team. And 54 and a half isn't a crazy high number, but I do think there's a bit more parity than we're giving credit for in the Eastern Conference. I may take the under here.
Yeah, so the East had four teams over 50 wins last season. The Celtics won 51 games last season, and that's with the start that they got off to. So yeah, I do think this team is deeper. They kind of just have to. I think they're gonna probably need an additional shooter, which let's see, possibly if they could get that type of guy at the deadline and really bring it into them. But yeah, I do think it's going to be interesting. The East is going to be a bloodbath this season. You even have, the Raptors are not going to be fun on a night-to-night basis. Just looking at the East and thinking about how many teams are like not trying to win this year, and like how many easy wins are there legitimately in the East right now. And honestly, I think you can make a case that the Pacers are in the Wemby the tank for Wemby sweepstakes, also tank for Scoot Henderson. We're not going to disrespect that brother either. The Magic have a lot of talent on that team. They're not going to be an easy W for even the best teams in the league. You're kind of gonna have to bring it. They have a lot of depth, and they have some good versatility and some young up and comers that are going to be nasty. The Pistons are going to be a lot of fun to watch. You don't want to get into a dogfight with Cade and them boys. And I think Cade is going to be able to, keep them in a lot of games and like lose a lot of close games late, which, kind of how the Pistons were playing last season. And they brought in a lot of, high end young talent. And they also did bring in, a couple additional, back end depth veteran pieces. So, yeah, I'm taking the over for the Celtics. I think they have a good chance to be the best regular season team in the East, and will they make it out the East again? Kind of depends on the matchups and who's healthy at the right times. Because yeah, like you did say, right? I think the Bucks aren't going to be fun, and the Sixers are another one of those just wild cards. About we don't know what version of them we're going to get when it is time, when it's playoff time for sure. So that's going to wrap us up for the Boston Celtics. 54.5 wins. Let us know in the comments. Are you taking that over? Or are you taking that under? So, Draft Season Podcast, we'll be back with another NBA team preview for the upcoming season. We got a lot of content coming for you guys shortly. Make sure you guys are subscribed to that Draft Season Podcast. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. Draft Season Podcast. We running it up for you guys, and we out of here.